Hey the YouTube, is your boy Lipid out here with another Veritasium reaction. Today we got the most dangerous cognitive bias. Let's get right into it, shall we? Hit it.
Friday, the 17th of July, 1992. Amidst the chaos of the trading floor at Singapore's International Stock Exchange, one of the junior traders makes an expensive mistake. Instead of buying 20 futures contracts for a client, she sold them instead, costing Barings Bank nearly $40,000.
Okay.
To save her job, her boss, Nick Leeson, a young trader keen to make his mark, decides to hide the loss. He puts it in an obscure error account. That's account 88888. It's used by banks to solve small discrepancies in trades. It's a dangerous move, and it should have been picked up by the central office immediately, but when nobody from Barings notices, he gains confidence, convinced he can win back the loss and get the team out of trouble.
I've seen this movie. If I'm not wrong, I think there was a movie right on this, but I forgot the name. I remember seeing the clips on YouTube. I don't think I watched the full movie, but I remember seeing parts of it.
I'm operating in the belief that I can get it back.
Yeah.
You know,
And there is nothing more dangerous than someone who desperately knows they've made a mistake, wants to get that money back. And the thing is, they probably may have actually made the money back, but then in taking the risks to do so, you make one bad mistake and it's game over.
maybe it goes back to the confidence thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm confident I can get it back at that stage.
But Leeson's staggering overconfidence would create a debt of gargantuan proportions. And
Just $40,000. I'm like, bro, if they didn't do anything there, just let it go as an accounting error. And like maybe hide it for like as long as you can. Or even be honest about it. That could have been avoided.
and lead to one of the biggest collapses in banking history.
Yeah. Barings. Okay.
It's easy for me to make the case that overconfidence is the most dangerous of the human biases.
Yeah.
Overconfidence gets us into all sorts of trouble. It leads us to take risks, make commitments, enter contests, try things that will ultimately fail, sometimes in costly, embarrassing, and dangerous.
But I mean, okay, I apologize for pausing this early on. I would much rather us be like, if there was a bias we needed to have, I think it's still better for us to be overconfident than to be underconfident. Like just not have enough confidence to do something. I think the human species in general has made significant progress and has gained so much from people being overconfident that I think, yeah, sure, it is still a negative bias overall. I think it's a worthwhile bias to have though.
Dangerous ways.
Overconfidence has been implicated in almost every big disaster.
Yeah.
From the sinking of the Titanic to the Chernobyl nuclear disaster.
Well, to be fair, well, I wouldn't really know if I'm going to call. I mean, maybe I'm not educated enough to make to state that it's not just overconfidence. I think, but that was just straight up arrogance. I know it's easier to conflate the two, but if you're arrogant enough to say, "Oh my God, here's this big ship that's floating on the ocean and it will never sink," you are begging the universe to correct you. If you have a nuclear reactor that for whatever reason it was not designed with like the best intentions in mind, or like was not designed so much that it could compensate for like the edge case scenarios that it went through, which was Chernobyl. I'm like, bro, you want to come up and it's one of those things in engineering that they drill into you very early on. That is, you never go in assuming the answer is a straight up yes or no. There is almost always an asterisk associated with any decision or any information you get. Like in engineering, there's a term called rely upon information, and even that sometimes is difficult to get.
Disaster to the loss of the Space Shuttle Challenger.
Right.
But overconfidence
But even that's okay. Well, sure.
isn't reserved for just a few reckless individuals. We
Sure.
can all fall victim to it.
Sure.
For example, 93% of us think we are better drivers than the median, which is, of course, impossible.
The scale of the problem was identified in some now classic research with a set of simple quiz questions.
True or false, Australia is wider than the moon?
Is Australia wider than the moon? Okay, so you're just putting the moon in space and you're just taking Australia as a continent, flattening it, and then keeping them side by side and guessing which one is wider. I would guess yes.
Oh, I bet they're about the same size.
I would say Australia is wider.
It's just, it looks small on a map, but it's huge.
Are there more or less stars in the Milky Way than trees on Earth?
I think, if I'm not wrong, so because you're limiting it by the Milky Way, isn't it? If you're just putting it to like the local, like the Milky Way galaxies, that's our galaxy alone. Yeah, I would guess there's more trees on Earth than there are stars in the Milky Way. But if you say the observable universe, then it pivots. I'd say there's more stars in the observable universe than there are trees on Earth, right?
More stars. More stars.
1 teaspoon of pure olive oil,
Right.
about 4.5 grams, contains more chemical potential energy than an equivalent 4.5 gram amount of TNT.
I'm going to say
No, well, not more.
say true.
No.
Oh no.
I'd say, but I mean, equivalent energy? No.
This feels kind of like a trick question.
Yeah, which is why you're assessing every question as though it's a trick question, knowing that it's... Since you know it's a study on overconfidence, you're going to be skeptical for each question, I think, as well.
Of
So
butter
fair.
is 10 times that of lithium batteries, right? I mean, lithium batteries are rubbish. Everyone's going on about them. Just run your car on butter, I say.
True or false? Plants are more efficient than the average solar panel at absorbing the sun's energy.
Yeah.
No. I remember a video about this because as much as chlorophyll is used well, it's only a minor percentage of the sun that's being converted to energy. A vast majority of it is still lost as waste. There's a video about this. I think solar panels are more efficient.
They must be. Now, these aren't the exact questions from the original research, more on those later, but the specifics don't really matter. The interesting bit is what they asked next. How confident are you that you are right?
I'm not very confident. Any of those answers, I'm not very confident.
100% confident.
100% confident?
100, yes.
I think it's true. So I've also got to go 90%.
100%. 100%.
I'm 50-50 on all those questions, bro, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I don't think we actually had any expectations. This was very early on in the research on confidence assessment, but we didn't really know what we would find.
Yeah.
The results revealed a surprising disparity between how accurate someone thinks they are and how accurate they actually are. When people are 90% certain, they are right only 75% of the time. In fact, we ran our own version of this online and found an even more extreme discrepancy. We asked the Veritasium community.
If you weighed out all the moving electrons that make up the internet, they would weigh about as much as a Honda Civic. All the electrons that would make up... to be fair, I feel like this exceeds my knowledge on physics, bro. Even I, that's a 50-50 guess right there. That is a guesswork answer. With all the moving electrons that make up the internet would weigh about as much as a Honda Civic. Instinctively, my answer is no, false.
A bunch of science questions and then asked how confident they...
How likely do you think the previous statement was true? Less.
They were in their answer. Our results showed that those who were the most confident, describing themselves as 91 to 100% sure, were only correct 51% of the time. Since the original research, these results have been replicated again and again in all areas from general knowledge to motor skills. And it affects...
I'm not gonna lie, if you watched Air Crash Investigation, like the National Geographic, or I think it's a Discovery TV show, or even it's on the History Channel as well, right? Almost, if it's human error, it's almost always overconfidence.
Everyone, even experts.
I have a paper where we analyze the survey of professional forecasters. These are chief economists at various corporations and banks who are invited to forecast the state of the economy on a quarterly basis. We find that they are, on average, too sure that they know what's going to happen. So they, on average, say there's something like 53% sure they have correctly predicted what's going to happen to inflation, for instance, and they are right like 23% of the time.
How well what you think you know matches with what you actually know is called your calibration. So if you're perfectly calibrated and say 80% confident, you should be right 80% of the time.
Right.
But most of us are not well calibrated.
100%.
100%?
Yeah.
There are 200 billion stars in the Milky Way, but there are 3 trillion trees on Earth.
Right? I remember hearing about this a while ago as well.
100% confident?
100, yes.
False!
No. Solar panels are more efficient.
Most of the time, being overconfident isn't a huge issue. But for Nick Leeson...
Yeah, most of the time, overconfidence is not an issue in social settings or in general, like, modern day life-to-life moments. Because as human beings, that's what we were, destined to do. But when you have godlike technology and the ability to like end the world on the press of a button, you might want to really take into account the fact that, hey, overconfidence could probably end the world faster than you can say butterscotch, buttercup. I'm not sure where I was going with this tangent, but at the same point in time, overconfidence kills you. Be careful.
The stakes soon became very high. Leeson's plan to recover his team's loss was to bet the Japanese stock market would go up. So he went long on the top 225 companies in Japan, the Nikkei 225.
Ever since the Japanese asset price bubble peaked 2 years previously, the Nikkei had been dropping from 38,000 to 16,000.
And he was confident the market would soon bottom out and start rising. But it continued to fall. Over the next few weeks, it dropped to a low of 14,000. And the whole time, Nick was betting the wrong way with ever bigger and riskier bets.
Forgive me if I'm wrong, right? I think this is also one of those things with option trading that I remember like hearing a while ago. People do like get into like leverage trades for like, because it's a zero-sum game. If someone's making money, someone's losing money in options. And especially if you're going calls or puts, and I'm not educated on this enough, but my understanding is the whole point of call and put options was basically hedging against your options in purchasing stock. So if you bought a stock, but you still wanted to hedge the risk of that stock price going down, you buy puts and vice versa. So that was the whole point of the options trading, but apparently it's become so lucrative that people are like, but you can leverage like 10x or like even more. And then just be like, but you see stories on like Reddit, for example, people made a lot of money, but they don't see the other side of the story, which it's like survivorship bias. You see the trades that win. You don't see like the hundreds, if not thousands of people that lost their money. And I think it's a very dangerous game to play. Like you have to be absolutely sure of what the consequences are, what the rules are, and know that you are going up against something that is not only irrational at times, which is the stock market, you are also going up against algorithms and entire hedge funds who have more financial resources and experience than one individual trader will ever have. And I think knowing those odds are so stacked against you, and if you're partially educated to know that, I feel like you won't take those chances, honestly.
Fall. Over the next few weeks, it dropped to a low of 14,000.
Prime example of this, but sure. I mean, to be fair, I don't think anyone could have forecasted this. To be fair, this is kind of like a...
The whole time, Nick was betting the wrong way with ever bigger and riskier bets. He would double down, betting double his losses so the next win would bring him back above water. This strategy should work when the next win comes along, but the market
never came up.
Collapse was unrelenting, and his losses ballooned from $40,000 to around $3 million. In spite of this, Leeson remained confident. And eventually his luck turned around. In the spring of 1993, the market rebounded up to 20,000, and by the summer, that account was back in credit.
At the very point in time, you can close it off here, say nothing ever happened, may have shaved off a year in your life because of the blood pressure and the stress, but you'll still have your job.
Leeson goes out to celebrate that weekend, drinking and dancing on tables, finally free of the hole he had dug himself into.
Close the position. Just close the position.
But on Monday morning, he made another trading error on the futures market, a damaging loss that Leeson didn't want to admit, so he put the loss back into account 88888.
Again?
Confident that if he got out of the previous one, he could do it again. He began making risky trades to try to recover that initial loss, and as the losses mounted in the 5/8 account, it became harder and harder to make new trades to cover the last loss.
Yeah.
By the end of 1993, his losses exceeded $30 million. Leeson is obviously an extreme example, but this tendency to overestimate our abilities is something we all share.
There's a reason why gambling is extremely popular in certain parts of the world, fam. It's so tied into human nature. It's just...
So the question is why?
The obvious explanation that a lot of people default to, that is, we want to feel good about ourselves and pretend like we're well informed, that we enjoy enormous satisfaction from being able to say, I know, or even better, I told you so.
Yeah, and yeah, I can see that.
So we pretend to ourselves and others that we know when we don't.
And to be fair, it's always going to be people who are able to be that confident, who are able to just say, hey, I told you so, I'm overly confident, even though they, even when others can basically say, well, they weren't right. But people with that kind of confidence usually climbs up corporate ladders very quickly as well. So it just helps that confidence pushes you up like routes that to other people who might not take those risks wouldn't be able to go up. Yeah.
That is the motivated, egocentric version of an explanation for excessive faith in our own judgment.
True.
Reichelt had faith in the idea.
Because it's one of those things where you have to, because the alternative, and which I think is, I don't know how right it is for me to say it, but I think critical thinking is also something that I think should be taught a lot more. And it's basically going up along the lines of, hey, if there is a problem and you need to find a way to solve it, you don't just give the tools and just say, oh, the answer is this. No, you need to figure out a pathway to solve certain problems. And the more complicated the problem is and the longer it takes for you to eventually solve it, you get better over time, which is the reason why if you don't have certain information available at that time, you go and find that information and then you place your bets and then you're able to guess properly. Because at the end of the day, it shouldn't be a guess what you do. You should be absolutely sure that to reach your goal, you need to have all the key piece of information so that you're able to get to where you want to be. That's the most important thing.
If nothing else.
And the thing why I'm saying critical thinking is important is because half the time, and I think it's even more than half, it just is so energetically expensive to think. And I know it sounds bad saying it. That's true. Thinking can be tiring, can be exhausting. Some people just don't want to think. I feel like if you just tell someone like, it's the question with like solar panels. It's like, well, trees and solar panels, which do you think is more efficient? People could default and say, well, nature has had trees for like billions of years, so trees more efficient, 100% confident. But in reality, the information they're lacking there is, but chlorophyll for a very long period of time isn't the most efficient way of converting sunlight to, energy. And if you have a little bit more information there, I think what's more important is exposing people to all those other information that they've not had before. Had they been informed that, hey, chlorophyll isn't as efficient, it makes your mind question your decision before you say, solar panels are human inventions, sure, but at least we're better than what exists right now. And I think you're able to take a more educated guess when you have more information available to you. So I am optimistic that with the internet, with the information we have at hand, if you have a phone and you can Google it, you can probably make a better guess as long as you're connected to the internet. We're all hybrid beings that use the internet, which gives us access to like all of human knowledge in the palm of your hand. We don't see it as extremely and we don't think of it as being extremely important, but you feel it every day the moment your phone is taken away from you. You feel naked. You feel like, oh my God, I've lost something. Like I've lost my access to the information I need at hand. So no, 100%, we feel it every day. It's just, we call it different things, but I feel like the more informed you are, the more information you have in your mind, the better decisions you're able to make. I think that's it. Overconfidence basically does come from, like, in my mind, a lack of critical knowledge needed to make that decision.
But what if it's something more uncomfortable?
And there is the other angle of like overestimating your ability. Now, that aspect, I can see where Veritasium is coming from. I can see where it's coming from.
Stupidity. Franz Reichelt was a tailor with no formal scientific or engineering.
Isn't this the dude who jumped off with like trying to fly and then didn't? I'm pretty sure this is the
training,
case.
But he was obsessed with solving the problem of aviation safety.
Yeah,
he spent months designing a parachute suit, which repeatedly failed during testing. But he became convinced the issue was that he didn't have enough height for it to work.
So in February 1912, he took it to the Eiffel Tower. And rather than using a dummy to test it, he jumped himself.
Yeah. You see, I may not be as optimistically inclined as the gentleman here, but I would probably say strapping a rock, not necessarily a rock, maybe a watermelon or something of relative weight, and then just pushing it off, the Eiffel Tower might be a better use of it, so that, hey, if it works on smaller weights, you add enough weight until it gets to your weight class, and then you jump off. I think that's a smarter move, but what do I know?
Tragic, but also really dumb.
Yes.
Do you recognize this graph?
Yes. Yes. Oh my God. Oh Jesus Christ. Yes. This is the this is the confidence of someone who thinks they know everything. And this is the point in time they recognize you don't know what you don't know. And it comes crashing down. This is the point where you think you know enough to know that you know what you don't know. And then your confidence picks back up. Yes, I know this graph very intimately.
Like Dunning-Kruger graph.
Are you confident that this is the actual Dunning-Kruger graph?
Not at all. In fact, I think that this is not the Dunning-Kruger.
Yeah. So the thing is, I would like to think that's the graph that represents most people, but I let's see where it goes.
Dunning-Kruger graph. I think that this is a bit of a communication trick.
This is what people call the Mount Stupid curve, which will pop up if you search for the Dunning-Kruger effect in Google Images.
Sure.
As far as I understand it, it's an effect that says that when you know very little about it, your confidence is high. And as you know more about it, your confidence sinks until you become a master at it.
Yeah.
But I think that the actual result was like a little bit more fuzzy than this.
Yeah, true.
It was. This graph doesn't actually show the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's just a meme that resonates with a lot of people, and it became conflated with the effect.
Oh, okay.
In their original research, Dunning and Kruger...
So this would be overconfidence. But to be fair, I think I did conflate it with my experience of seeing it. So I'm curious, what is it?
Tested people on tasks like grammar, logic, and humor, and then they asked participants to estimate how well they performed.
Oh.
That produced this curve. You can see that those who performed worse had the largest mismatch between their confidence and performance.
Interesting.
They were
Okay.
the most overconfident.
Okay.
Those who performed the best were actually slightly
Very closer.
underconfident.
Yeah.
This suggests that overconfidence may be linked to how much we know. Those who know less think that they know more than they do. But to me, this effect looks a little like a statistical artifact because while I was doing my PhD, I asked students some physics questions and I also asked for their confidence in their answers. And when I looked at the results, accuracy spanned the full range from nearly 0% to 100%. But confidence varied over a much narrower range. All the scores were roughly in the middle. This meant
50.
that poor performers were the most overconfident, and the highest performers were actually slightly underconfident.
Right.
This is exactly what Dunning and Kruger found. So maybe overconfidence isn't entirely due to how much we know, but also because most of us express at least kind of middle of the road confidence.
Right.
But there is another factor at play here, which is how much information our brains are capable of processing.
And this is the whole argument, right? Because in the beginning, because if you had every piece of information that was critical in making a decision, I think most people would take the right decision. And I think their confidence would also be higher because they have not only access to that information, but they're able to dedicate it, allocate it properly to the thinking process. So if you ask the same group that did the chlorophyll and the solar panel test and the tree test, if you gave them information on efficiency, I think they'd probably get the answer right.
Monday, the 27th of January, 1986. It's 5:45 p.m. at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, and the engineers from Morton Thiokol, who made the Challenger space shuttle's rocket boosters, make an emergency conference call.
I think I remember this, and I think I've watched almost every single space shuttle challenge, accident documentary. And I think the reason was they've had past flights. I think Veritasium will get to it. I think they did past flights and they noticed that the colder the temperature, the O-rings that eventually seal properly so that the hot gases don't escape. In the older mission, like the mission a previous mission, didn't fully seal because of how cold it was, which led to some of the hot gases escaping, which started melting some critical parts of the connector pin. So they basically said, hey, it's too cold to launch. Let's just wait till it's warmer. And they're basically what their concern, they said, was ignored by NASA, if I'm not wrong.
They've just seen the weather forecast, predicting temperatures overnight will plummet to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, far colder than any previous shuttle launch.
Yeah.
They know the rubber O-rings that seal joints in the boosters become less flexible in the cold,
Not able
but
to
have
seal.
just a few hours to gather data, create charts, and present their case. Over the next 6 hours, the engineers present 13 charts with data on O-ring temperature, hot gas erosion, joint rotation, and more. But the data is scattered, incomplete, and not synthesized into a clear narrative.
Right.
They'd never tested below 53 degrees Fahrenheit, so NASA managers were trying simultaneously to track historical O-ring data, erosion patterns, joint dynamics, seal resiliency, pressure differentials, and more. No single chart told the whole story,
Right.
so overwhelmed by seemingly contradictory data and confident that their rocket boosters were safe, vehicle management overruled their own engineers and approved the launch.
Hey, that's a very soft-handed way of saying engineers said they're concerned, we ignored them. That's a very soft way of saying it, but okay. To be honest, I hate saying this, but every safety rule, and I've said this many times, like any safety rule is written in blood. And I think one of the most important things here was after this, any single space launch, like could be rockets, could be with SpaceX, could be with NASA, could be with any organization, space organization, right? Was like either you're 100% sure this thing lifts off the ground or we don't do anything at all. And I think that's the right move because the alternative is what happens here.
At 11:38 the next morning, 73 seconds after launch, all 7 crew members were killed.
Yep.
Calibrating your certainty requires thinking of all the ways that you could be wrong.
And I don't know if they showed it here.
All 7 crew members were killed.
Calibrating your certainty
they're not showing it here. Okay.
requires thinking of all the ways that you could be wrong. And that's hard for finite, fallible agents like us, if it means considering everything that we don't know.
How many chunks of novel information you can hold in your head at one time.
Right. And that's the important thing, is if you had access to all that information that helps you take a critical decision, you would get it right almost all the time. Anyone would get it right. It's how much information you have in hand at that moment that makes the critical difference. I think it's unfair asking those questions to people without giving them access to their phones. Without giving them access to their phones and then basically making them, pick a call or take a decision. I think most people today, as long as they have access to their phones, and if they were asked those questions, could Google they could Google the damn question and get an answer, but they could probably get the information they need to get to the right answer. So I'm more confident today that people are less likely to make those errors because they have access to that information. Now, however, there's a counter argument that you can make that since people have access to this information readily, they might keep even less information in their minds. I remember back in the day when my mom and dad would tell me that since they weren't having phone books, they had to memorize like phone numbers, like in the back of my mind. I can't do that. I can't do that anymore, so I have to use my phone. So you can make the counter argument that since people have all the access to the information they need online, they're keeping even less critical information with them, making them make even less informed decisions today, which means we're overall net negative or net better off, not net better off, because of technology giving us direct access to information, counterintuitively.
Time is your short-term memory capacity.
Right.
In 2008, Hansen, Juslin, and Winman investigated how short-term memory capacity was linked to accuracy and overconfidence.
Right.
Participants were asked to give ranges for factual questions like the length of a river or the population of a city.
People's ranges were consistently too narrow, which effectively meant they were being overconfident. And those who had worse short-term memory were more often wrong and more likely to be overconfident.
Right.
Another study conducted by Conti in 2023 asked participants to keep sequences of letters in their mind while they judged their own performance. As the memory load increased, confidence estimates became less accurate, even for participants with higher working memory capacities. Together, these studies suggest that assessing your accuracy is a mentally taxing task.
Yes.
So overconfidence isn't necessarily about arrogance. It's your brain working at the limits of what it can track and hold.
And believe me, I think we get better at it. I think as the brain is stressed, and I think there is physical responses to that stress, which isn't good for you, by the way. Stress is never a good thing if you're not very good at de-stressing. But if you can keep, key pieces of information in your mind, and as your workload increases, there's an engineering term for this. It's called paralysis through analysis. The idea being, if you're pushing your mind to the very limit of what it's capable of, you're eventually going to reach a point where you just stop doing anything because your mind is just sitting and processing everything that it has to do. And while it's trying to figure out what action to take, it freezes. It's like paused. It's just like, what do I do? there are different ways around it. You can note down everything you have, like you just keep reciting in your mind, writing down everything you need to do, and it lessens the load on the brain. And then since it's written down, you get to basically plan what actions are going to be the most actions you need to take. Once it's done, you strike it off, which is effective, extremely effective. But at the same time, you get better at it. I think I remember way back in the day, I could probably keep like 2 or 3 tasks in the back of my mind. Now it's comfortable to do like 10, 15, even 20. It's a lot better now. And I think that's by constantly training the brain to be better at doing those tasks, right? It's mentally taxing, but it's like, your brain's a muscle. It's like, it's well, not made of muscles, it's fat mainly, but it's like a muscle. The more you use it and tax it, the better it gets.
Because of
brain plasticity and all that, my ladies and gentlemen.
Your brain can start using shortcuts.
Yes.
Psychologist Daniel Kahneman describes these mental shortcuts as heuristics that together create systemic errors called cognitive biases. One shortcut we use a lot is substituting hard questions with easier related ones.
Right.
Researchers have tested this by asking students how happy they were in their life and how many dates they'd had in the last month. Unsurprisingly, these 2 questions did not correlate. There's a lot more to happiness than matches on Tinder, at least for most people. However, if you switch it around and ask about their dates first, suddenly the correlation jumps to 0.66. Working out how happy you are in your life is a difficult question. You have to consider many things and balance them all out. So when you're primed with the information about your dating life, you're very likely to substitute that hard question, like how happy am I in my life, with how many dates have I recently had?
Overconfidence from misprocessing information like this can be disastrous.
Yes.
So why are our brains wired this way? I mean, you might expect natural selection to have wiped out
that cutaway to the spatial scene is diabolical, by the way. Editor.
Confidently incorrect. But there is evidence that overconfidence can actually be advantageous.
Yeah. I imagine evolutionarily, it must have been like a critical life-saving thing. Could you imagine every single like early human being trapped up a tree because we were surrounded by like wolves or like hyenas? You would pray for your survival for like that 1 or 2 of our early ancestors to have the balls to just jump down and try running away, or like buy others enough time for them to do something else. And it's like, you need people with overconfidence, or as a species, we would not have survived this long.
Overconfidence can massively improve your status.
Oh, yes.
In a scientific version of The Apprentice, scientists in 2012 compared participants' own assessments of their skill with objective measures.
Yes.
They placed them in group tasks to see who was chosen as a leader and whose ideas influenced the group, tracking status over multiple sessions and assessing whether the desire for status led participants to exaggerate their abilities.
Yes. The results were clear. Overconfident individuals were more likely to lead, assert themselves, and maintain influence, even when their actual abilities were mid. And the evidence certainly shows people react better to confident individuals.
Because it's one of those things where even if you lack confidence, you think someone confident is on stage, you have more faith since you think they're confident, and you interpolate that confidence to ability, which fundamentally should be flawed. But as human beings, when we see someone who's extremely confident, someone standing there, be like, you know what, they're confident. I think they're going to do a good job. And the person who's confident is like, that's just me, baby. That's just me. I'm just doing what I'm good at. And it is what it is, man.
Using an fMRI, researchers at the University of Sussex measured brain activity of people after hearing unconfident versus confident advice. Those who listened to the confident advice had increased activity in the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. That's a brain region associated with processing rewards and expected satisfaction. This means that human brains are biologically tuned to be influenced by confident individuals.
Yeah.
We literally feel better when we hear confident people.
But I feel like for every statement he says, there's always going to be that counter argument of like, this used to be true, and I think partially it does. Factually, yes, it's right, but you're also going up against the internet these days, bro. Like, someone could be overtly confident, but people would call them out for bad decisions or policies immediately if things don't go right. I feel like it's great that we have the internet to just call out bullshit, which people before couldn't. And I think that is changing nowadays.
But recognizing that dynamic highlights a potentially problematic incentive for anyone who's contending for positions that they want.
Go on.
People who express more confidence in employment interviews,
right,
or political campaigns, for instance, do earn the confidence of interviewers and potential voters, even if they're being overconfident. They can't actually deliver. They don't actually know the answer, but they can talk a good line to impress others, even if they can't ultimately deliver on those grand assertions.
Yeah.
They know the audience will place more faith in them if they express confidence. Well, they should express maximal confidence.
Leeson knew this, and he took advantage of it. While he was secretly racking up huge losses in the infamous 5/8 account, he was publicly posting huge profits, and everyone believed the illusion.
They come in and they don't test any records. So I can't be happier.
If something seems too good to be true, you have to question it. You always have to question it.
They didn't test one record.
As Leeson's hidden losses mounted, he requested huge sums from head office to keep doubling down, up to $5 million at a time. Baring's management, barely understanding futures and believing in their star trader, they granted his requests and continued to grant future requests.
This might be single-handedly why hedge funds have risk management now. Basically just evaluating every trade, every result of every trade, what they sell it for, what they gained. I think, yeah, it's a good reason. There's a reason why these rules are a lot more standardized now, because you can't get away with BS like this now. You absolutely can't.
Every day that I make one of these requests for additional money, I never expect it to come. I expect somebody to say, look, Nick, what the hell's going on?
By autumn 1994, the account was nearly $260 million in the red. To mask this, Leeson began buying futures from himself, inflating his perceived profits further. At Cymex's 10th anniversary in September, Barings received 2 awards, largely credited to Leeson. In December, he was flown to New York, seemingly responsible for $44 million in Barings' turnover that year. Some traders raised doubts that these kinds of profits could be made from the low-risk trading he was supposed to be doing.
And I think that's the thing. I remember there was there was a movie. I forgot the name. There's a movie about a trader who, it was like a Ponzi scheme. I think he didn't do the exact trades. He just kept the money, and then had, as a Ponzi scheme, as more people came in, he was able to distribute the money back to the original lenders. And I forgot the name. Yeah, and he was just confident. He was so confident he was never caught, and which was just. I think there was one person who kind of knew what he was doing was probably fraud. In fact, he was sure it was fraud because it was like statistically, he never posted losses, and his performance was so consistently green and good that he was like, bro, this is a Ponzi scheme. This has to be fraud. This is literally playing with people's money. And then he was proven right. I think I'll find the interview, when I find it.
But management's faith in Leeson's talent was unshakable.
Yeah.
And they dismissed these concerns.
Oof.
Baring's overconfidence in Leeson and Leeson's overconfidence in himself would be the bank's downfall.
The figures are so big it seems like the ultimate confidence trick. But there's a partial explanation for the delusion on both sides. Leeson's and Baring's overconfidence was amplified by the complexity and unpredictability of the market and the trades he was making.
True.
It's sort of an issue of feedback.
In a controlled environment where there are clear rules and guaranteed outcomes, like in a chess match, there is clear feedback on whether decisions are good or bad.
Yeah.
With reliable feedback, professional chess players are able to learn to make better decisions with more accurate confidence.
Right.
But in a noisy environment where there is rarely consistent
So
or
much
timely
noise, isn't it?
consequences
Yeah.
for predictions, this feedback is unreliable.
But to be fair, I think with the stock market being irrational as it is, I think if you still assess the baseline fundamentals of something, this is the value investing technique of just basically assessing it for like, what's its real value, what's the business looking like, what's its, against its share price. And sure, you might be able to make a trade or buy the stock, for example. The stock could still fall if the market enters a recession or something happens, which is beyond that stock's control. Now, to someone who's just seeing it for the first time, they try selling it at a loss. But reality is, if you know the fundamentals to be true and it's still fine, you're going to keep buying as it goes down. It is what it is.
Our confidence is accurate or misplaced is increasingly hard to judge, even amongst experts. It's especially problematic for political pundits.
This is going to be a landslide. I think Romney's going to win by quite a bit.
So right now we have Hillary's about a 75 or an 80% favorite.
For example, prior to 2024, political analyst Alan Lichtman had accurately predicted the winner of 9 of the 10 previous US presidential elections, using his 13 keys to the White House method. Using the same strategy in 2024, he predicted that
Kamala Harris will be a precedent-breaking president.
And look what happened. Is this crazy?
He attributed his miscalculation to the spread of disinformation that misled the electorate. This noisy environment made it difficult to discern key issues like the actual state of the economy. Similarly, the feedback Leeson had received was inconsistent. He was making some bad trades, but he had also won it all back before, and this significantly clouded his judgment, amplifying his overconfidence.
By 1995, Leeson's losses were in the hundreds of millions,
There's
and
just no
Barings
way.
had unwittingly sent him $1 billion. For a bank with around $700 million in capital base, they were legally only allowed to lend around a quarter of that. But no one questioned it. They were all blinded by his apparent success. At this point, his positions were so big, he estimates that he was probably half of the entire Nikkei futures market. So all he could do was...
my! I didn't know that piece of information. That is crazy. Half the futures market for a country.
Buy
Damn.
himself some time and hope that the market went his way. And for a while, it worked. The economy was stable and he couldn't see anything on the horizon that would change this. But then, disaster struck.
Japan is tonight in a state of mourning and of shock.
On the 17th of January 1995, the Great Hanshin earthquake struck Japan, 20 kilometers from the city of Kobe. With a magnitude of 6.9, it devastated the city, which was one of Japan's key ports. This devastation spread to the stock market. The Nikkei index plunged 1,055 points.
Leeson, attempting to double down again, risked even more money. He bet heavily that the Nikkei would make a rapid recovery, but it didn't. And in the end, in today's money, Leeson had lost $2.8 billion. On the 23rd of February, Leeson went on the run. And 3 days later, Barings, one of the oldest and most trusted banks in the world, collapsed. Overconfidence was at least partially to blame for its downfall.
Oh, bro, this is more than overconfidence, to be fair.
Realizing the walls were closing in, Leeson fled to Malaysia and then Thailand. But his escape was short-lived. He was eventually arrested in Germany and extradited to face justice, marking the end of a spectacularly destructive gamble. He was just 28 years old.
Bro, losing $1 billion+ at 28, bro, damn.
Now, we don't all bring down banks, but we are all vulnerable to overconfidence. In a complex world with unclear, noisy feedback where our brains are overwhelmed, a set of simplistic biases can take over. And we all too often end up thinking we know more than we do. So what can we actually do about this?
I try to get better at calibrating my confidence judgments by keeping track and keeping score. So when a colleague asks me, how long is it going to take you to get me comments on this paper draft we're working on? I don't promise I'll do it by Friday. I'm much more likely to say something like, I think there's a 60% chance I can get you comments by Friday. They'll often react with a quizzical look or a laugh.
Well, practicing and being aware of our calibration is the obvious way to improve, but so is being intellectually humble.
Yeah.
I think that the best medicine for overconfidence is not so much information as feedback. And I get plenty of that. Though I think people are right that sometimes I do have a little bit of overconfidence.
If we want to become more accurate, we should capitalize on the wisdom of the crowd by listening more to others. In particular, we should listen to people who disagree with us. Understanding the best arguments of your critics, understanding what information those who disagree with you have that you lack is very helpful for making better decisions.
I think it's also, but you have to balance it. Again, constructive criticism, absolutely great. Criticism for the sake of being criticism, fuck no. Just remember where to balance it.
The best calibrated people aren't those who know the most, it's those who know what they don't know.
Right.
So true wisdom lies not in being certain, but
is in the, I'm going to guess, is in the path you take to get even more knowledge, something like that?
But in knowing the limits of your own certainty.
Close enough. I feel like that was overconfident, but close enough.
That's an idea that's inspired our latest project. All those questions I asked.
These are good questions.
Well, they come from a new board game that we've made. It's called Elements of Truth.
Sick.
The game contains over 800 fascinating science trivia questions with a twist. The number of points you win on each question depends on how confident you are.
You can bid any number from 1 to 10. If you're not sure, you can play a low number, or you can try to follow the lead of someone else who you think should know the answer.
We've tested this game with scientists, teachers, and students, And what we found is that it regularly leads to discussions that go,
whew, well, yeah, this was a good video. This was a damn good video. I'm Veritasium. But yeah, that's about it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe. And I will catch you beautiful bastards in the next one. Peace, take care. Nice.